What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Farnamad, back with another video. I was gonna post a vlog Saturday, and I got sick and lost track of time. But that leads me to my topic for this video, and I just wanted to talk to you guys about guilt. There's several ways someone can feel guilty in their life. From my personal experience, I feel guilty not only as a result of my own doings towards myself, whether I tell myself I'm going to do X, Y, Z, for instance, upload on Saturday, and I fail to do so. And I feel guilty because I'm complacent with not respecting myself. Or whether I feel guilty as a result of how I treat other people. Most of the time it's not intentional. All the time it's not intentional, matter of fact. I know anyone with a sense of humanity never intentionally means to hurt someone, and it can happen in the moment, but regardless, the sense of guilt lingers. And I also feel guilty when I enjoy life and live in a certain way that may be comfortable and okay for some, but not for others with certain circumstances. And what I mean by that is I tend to hang out with friends, for instance. Not tend to, regular basis. What am I saying? I like to socialize. And for the past few months, with my first semester of my last year in school, in high school at least, I didn't really have a social life. It was just school, really, really tough classes, and then sports, club, and then home. And this was a cycle. Regardless of my physical health, regardless of my mental health, I had to do it. There was no other choice. And I felt alone throughout this whole experience. And I can sit here and talk about how I wish family and friends were in my corner, but I felt guilty. I felt guilty because I felt as though I not only let myself down, but I let those around me down. I'm held to a certain expectation, and when I don't meet those expectations, like everyone else, I feel guilty. At least, that's what I think. Well, last video, I talked about conditional love, and I also talked about how essentially to be loved, you must have a sense of worth in someone's life. And on a deeper note, I've always felt as though the love I've received was somewhat conditional. And when I wouldn't meet these expectations or conditions, there is an immediate sense of guilt. And this was my reality, simply. And I would often feel guilty, especially within these last few months. And I've come to a sense of failure, whether it be academically, athletically, anything in life. And not to set a depressing mood or whatever, but it's deeper than the career aspect of my life, right? It's as a brother, as a son, as a relative, and I acknowledge this, and I consciously try my best to change. And guilt is very consuming. Whenever I feel guilty, I often tend to shut down. And it's even worse when I let myself down and feel that guilt. I let myself down in various ways. And if you're watching this, chances are you have in the past as well. And that's why I came on here today. Even with the last video, I know there are people out there that understand how I feel, and that's the entire purpose of why I make these videos. But anyways, I feel as though I let myself down, and it's become more often than usual. And one of those reasons is that I tend to put off happiness and my action plan later off. And I wouldn't call it procrastinating. It's more of it's latent. It's putting off an experience and saving it for later because I essentially feel as though I don't deserve it, right? I feel as though I don't deserve that happiness, and I feel guilty for treating myself that way. And it feels as though I was always programmed that way, and I'm consciously trying to change. And being guilty for letting myself down, it's very painful because as a result of those expectations set on me growing up, I set a lot of expectations for myself. I don't like letting people down. And with that being said, I don't like letting myself down. This doesn't come from me prioritizing other things over what may be important, like my mental health, but it comes from what I see as success. And when I don't do things or live a certain way that progresses me and helps other people as a result of my progress, I feel guilty. And I'm not saying guilt is a bad thing and that it weighs me down. I'm just saying I become conscious of my guilt, and I think that's a good thing. I'm not sure, but guilt comes in various ways. And with all these forms of guilt, I feel as though it fosters a sense of accountability. And when I feel accountable, not only to respect myself, but to meet the expectations of others and to also help those around me, guilt fosters accountability, and accountability fosters a sense of duty. And those terms go hand in hand, I think. But I feel obligated, and I feel guilty when I don't feel obligated. I feel obligated to lift those around me and to truly, truly change the lives of not only those that I love, but simply anyone even watching this video. I want to make a lasting impact, and will feel guilty if I don't make that happen. And being delusional is really what motivates me and takes me far. Guilt arises when I stop being delusional and I start accepting defeat. Little defeats stack up and they snowball. And it's so crazy how fast they snowball too. How you think warps your reality. And I always heard this and thought it was cheesy and stupid, but nothing could be more true than this. How you think on a day-to-day basis warps your day-to-day experience. It warps your reality. And I feel guilty, immensely guilty, when I let these negative thoughts cloud not only my judgment, but my actions, which I guess is also my judgment, but it's heavy. Guilt is heavy. And how I treat other people, it's in the past, right? How you treat people, how you treat various individuals, but it weighs you down reflecting on these experiences, and that's guilt. You feel guilty for the way you treat these certain people in your life. I have a lot of guilt actively, whether it be subconscious or conscious, of even how I treated my loved ones. And it's less of an experience, and I can speak on behalf of many, if not all people, when I say that we're often more guilty for how we treat those we love than a random stranger, because it's more likely that you hurt someone that you love. And to sum all my types of guilt that I experience, they're heavy, they're very heavy, but they're there for a reason. And how you treat guilt is very important. Whether you let it weigh you down, or whether you acknowledge your guilt, confront your guilt, and morph it into a lesson. I feel guilty for how I experienced my life, living and going above what is probably meant for me. And that's delusion, right? That's delusion, and feeling as though you're worthy of happiness and worthy of a lasting experience. That's delusion. And that you're worthy of creating a reality for yourself to where, I don't know, for example, where you can retire your parents, where you can always have your siblings' backs financially, emotionally, whatnot. You can always be a pillar of support and stability for anybody that loves and relies on you in your everyday life. These various traits and these actions, these qualities in a person, they hold you to a standard. And it brings me back to my sense of guilt. When you treat it as a lesson and you use it to actively work towards these things, I feel as though that's very vital and it's very important. And I won't drag this video any much longer than it has to be. Maybe in the future I can elaborate more on how I feel and how I feel as though I can relate to the people out there in the audience. But what I'm going to leave this at is, even though active guilt is very heavy and very depressing in a sense, I feel as though, I know earlier I said I don't think guilt is necessarily a bad thing, but it feels heavy, and when things feel heavy emotionally, I know they often also feel depressing in a sense. But what I want you to take away from this video is that guilt, it can be good. When you feel guilty of something, you acknowledge that something went wrong in your life, and then in turn you eventually let that guilt go, you know? So I guess to backtrack a little bit, I wouldn't say guilt is all a perfect thing, but it's part of the process, I'd say. And I guess that's sort of a thesis I came to after all this talking and discussing with you guys. So yeah, be nice to yourself, acknowledge your guilt, and just grow. It's gonna be okay.